Enjoy our spine-chilling stories as you sleep, commute, or relax. If you're new, hit subscribe and share with friends and family. Let us know in the comments how we can improve. Our stories are best experienced with headphones on. Now, let's dive into today's tale.
Warning: the following stories contain elements of horror that explore themes of the supernatural, possession, psychological terror, and gruesome transformations. They are intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for those sensitive to graphic imagery or themes of death, entrapment, and eternal damnation. Listener discretion is advised. Across the Veil, chilling nighttime tales from those who dare to listen. Story number 1. The Vanishing Woods. Chapter 1. Arrival. The sun dipped below the horizon as Alex Harper steered the beat-up sedan into a clearing near Staircase Rapids in the Olympic National Forest. Towering cedars stretched into the sky, their branches draped with moss, while a thick fog clung to the ground, lending the scene an ethereal glow. Alex, the group's unofficial leader, killed the engine and turned to his 3 passengers with a grin. "This is it, guys," he said, stepping out into the crisp air. "Our last big adventure before the real world swallows us whole." Jamie Ruiz, sprawled across the back seat, snorted as he climbed out. "Real world? You mean soul-crushing desk jobs and student loan payments?" "Exactly," Taylor Kim chimed in, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she slung her backpack over her shoulder. "That's why we're here, to make memories that'll outlast the boredom." Casey Sullivan, quieter than the rest, lingered by the car, her gaze fixed on the forest. The fading light cast shadows across her face, highlighting her thoughtful expression. "It's beautiful," she murmured, "but there's something heavy about this place." Alex clapped her on the shoulder, brushing off her unease. "Don't worry, Case. It's just trees, moss, and maybe a curious raccoon or two. Nothing to freak out about." The 4 friends, fresh from college graduation, had planned this trip for months, eager to escape the looming responsibilities of adulthood. The Olympic National Forest, with its wild beauty and whispered legends, seemed the perfect setting. Locals spoke of vanishings tied to its depths, but the group dismissed the tales as campfire fodder. They set up camp near a gurgling creek, pitching 2 tents and gathering firewood. Laughter echoed as Taylor struggled with the tent poles, and Jamie teased her mercilessly. By the time the fire crackled to life, the sky was a moonless expanse of black, the stars obscured by the forest canopy. Around the campfire, they roasted marshmallows and swapped stories, funny memories from school, plans for the future. But as the flames dwindled, an odd stillness settled over them. The usual chorus of crickets and rustling leaves faded, replaced by a silence that pressed against their ears. "It's so quiet," Casey whispered, hugging her knees. Jamie rolled his eyes. "That's because we're in the middle of nowhere, genius." Alex felt it too, though, a prickling sensation, like unseen eyes watching from the shadows. He forced a smile. "Let's hit the sack. Big day of hiking tomorrow." They retreated to their tents, Alex and Jamie in one, Taylor and Casey in the other. But sleep didn't come easily. The forest seemed alive with subtle sounds, a twig snapping, leaves rustling, and faint whispers that danced on the edge of perception. In the darkness, something ancient stirred. Chapter 2. Whispers in the dark. A scream jolted Alex awake, piercing the stillness. He bolted upright, heart hammering against his ribs. What was that? Jamie was already fumbling with the tent zipper. I don't know, but it came from Casey's tent. They stumbled into the night, the cold air biting their skin. Taylor met them outside, her face pale in the beam of her flashlight. Casey's gone. The tent was empty. Casey's sleeping bag lay untouched, her shoes still neatly lined up by the entrance. No footprints marked the damp earth around the site. "Casey!" Taylor's shout echoed through the trees, swallowed by the fog. They fanned out, calling her name, their voices trembling with rising panic. The forest offered no answers, just shadows and silence. Where could she have gone? Jamie demanded, kicking a pine cone in frustration. Alex tried to steady his breathing. Maybe she went for a walk and got lost. In the middle of the night, Taylor's voice cracked, without her shoes? They agreed to wait until dawn, to search properly, stumbling around in the dark, risked getting lost themselves. Huddled in Alex's tent, they sat in tense silence, straining to hear any sign of Casey. Then the whispers began. Soft at first, like a breeze carrying voices, they grew louder, circling the tent. Alex's skin prickled. "Do you hear that?" Jamie nodded, eyes wide. "It's like people talking, but I can't make out the words." The whispers swelled, pressing in from all sides, then stopped abruptly. The sudden quiet was deafening. The friends exchanged fearful glances, the reality sinking in. Something was very wrong. Chapter 3. The Search. Dawn painted the forest in muted grays as the trio resumed their search. They followed a faint trail away from the campsite, calling Casey's name until their throats ached. The trees loomed taller here, their branches knitting a canopy that blocked the weak sunlight. Hours later, they stumbled upon a cedar etched with strange symbols, concentric circles slashed by jagged lines, carved deep into the bark. Taylor ran her fingers over the markings. "What are these?" Alex shrugged, unease gnawing at him. Some kind of trail marker, maybe. Nearby, they found an abandoned campsite. A rotting sleeping bag sagged against a stump, and a cracked phone lay half buried in the dirt. Jamie picked it up, brushing off the grime. The screen flickered to life, revealing a blurry photo, the last image taken. It showed a face, eyeless and distorted, its mouth stretched in a silent scream. "What the hell is that?" Jamie dropped the phone, recoiling. Taylor clutched Alex's arm. "This isn't right. We need to get out of here." They hurried back to their campsite, hearts pounding, only to find their car dead. The engine wouldn't turn over, though it had worked fine the day before. Alex popped the hood, but the battery cables were intact. No obvious reason for the failure. "We're stuck," Taylor said, her voice trembling. With no cell signal and no choice, they faced another night in the forest. The symbols, the photo, and Casey's absence weighed on them, fraying their nerves. Chapter 4. Taylor's disappearance. Night fell like a curtain, heavy and oppressive. The friends sat close, jumping at every rustle. Taylor fidgeted, her usual bravado gone. "I need to use the bathroom," she said, standing abruptly. "Be careful," Alex warned, handing her a flashlight. She nodded and slipped into the darkness. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. Taylor didn't return. Alex and Jamie searched, shouting her name until their voices cracked. Near another carved tree, they found her jacket, shredded as if clawed apart. No blood, no footprints, just the tattered fabric dangling from a branch. "Oh, God," Jamie whispered, backing away. "What's happening to us?" Alex clenched his fists, fear hardening into resolve. "We have to find them. Casey and Taylor. We're not leaving anyone behind." But as they trudged back to camp, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent, weaving through the trees. They reached the tent just as a scream, Jamie's, tore through the night. Alex spun around. The tent was empty. Jamie was gone. Chapter 5. Jamie's Scream. Alone, Alex's world shrank to the beam of his flashlight. He searched frantically, calling his friends' names, until his voice gave out. The forest mocked him with silence. In desperation, he ventured deeper, stumbling upon another abandoned site. Amid the debris, a rusted lantern, a mildewed tarp, he found a weathered journal, its pages brittle. Dated 1987, it belonged to Michael Grayson, a hiker who'd vanished decades ago. Michael's entries detailed a spirit of fear that lured campers into a hidden realm, feeding on their terror. "It's the land's guardian," he wrote, "betrayed by settlers who broke sacred promises. It takes those who trespass without respect." Alex's mind flashed to his grandmother, Partmaka, who'd spoken of spirits appeased by offerings and humility. The journal's final page outlined a ritual, a plea, an offering, a gesture of respect at the marked tree. Clutching the journal, Alex knew what he had to do. His friends' lives depended on it. Chapter 6. The ritual. Alex gathered what he could, a granola bar from his pack, a woven bracelet Taylor had made, and words of apology he rehearsed under his breath. At the symbol-laden tree, he knelt, the damp earth soaking his jeans. "I'm sorry," he said, placing the offerings at the trunk. "We didn't know. I honor this land. Please, release my friends." The air thickened, buzzing with energy. A figure materialized, a translucent Native American shaman, his eyes blazing with ancient rage, his form wreathed in mist. "You trespass and take," it intoned, voice like thunder rolling through the trees. Alex bowed his head, trembling. "I mean no harm. I offer what I have. Please, let them go." The spirit studied him, then raised a hand. A path shimmered through the fog, cutting through the oppressive gloom. Chapter 7. Reunion. Alex followed the path, heart pounding, until he reached the ranger station, miles away. There, huddled under a flickering light, were Casey, Taylor, and Jamie, disoriented but alive. They'd been trapped in a gray void of whispers and shadows until the ritual broke the spirit's hold. On October 15th, they piled into a ranger's truck and left the forest behind. The experience had changed them. Casey more assertive, Taylor quieter, Jamie less cynical, and Alex humbled by the land's power. Their bond, tested by terror, emerged stronger. The Vanishing Woods taught them that some places hold secrets best left undisturbed, but also that courage and respect can conquer even the darkest fears. Story number 2, The Haunting of Blackwood Manor. Chapter 1, A New Beginning. The autumn sun bathed Savannah's historic district in a warm golden hue as the Thompson family arrived at Blackwood Manor on November 5th, 2012. Mark Thompson, a practical-minded engineer, admired the Victorian architecture, its steeply pitched roof, ornate gables, and wraparound porch. His wife, Lisa, an artist with a love for beauty, was captivated by the stained glass windows that threw kaleidoscopic patterns across the hardwood floors and the intricate woodwork framing every doorway. Their children, 12-year-old Emily and 8-year-old Jack, raced up the front steps, buzzing with excitement to explore their new home. "It's perfect," Lisa said, her eyes shining as she squeezed Mark's hand. "A fresh start for all of us." Mark nodded, forcing a smile. The manor's grandeur was undeniable, but a nagging unease tugged at him. The house had languished on the market for years, its price slashed far below what such a property should command. "Let's get settled," he said, brushing the thought aside as they stepped over the threshold. Inside, the manor unfolded like a maze of wonders. High ceilings loomed overhead, adorned with chandeliers that glittered faintly in the dim light. The air carried the scent of aged wood and a hint of lavender, as if the house had been waiting for them. Emily claimed a bedroom on the second floor, with a cushioned window seat overlooking the overgrown garden, while Jack chose a smaller room with a hidden alcove behind a sliding panel, perfect for secret hideouts. As the family unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, the manor seemed to hum with a quiet energy, a sensation that felt both welcoming and watchful. That first night, exhaustion pulled them into deep sleep. But in the early hours, a faint giggle rippled through the darkened halls. Jack stirred in his bed, mumbling about imaginary friends, though the rest of the family slept on, oblivious. The manor held its breath, its secrets still veiled. Chapter 2, Whispers and Shadows. By November 7th, the first hints of something strange emerged. Jack burst into the kitchen at breakfast, wide-eyed, insisting he'd heard laughter coming from inside the walls. "It's the kids who used to live here," he declared confidently. Lisa smiled, attributing it to his boundless imagination, but unease flickered in her chest. That night, Emily jolted awake from a nightmare, her heart pounding. She described a woman in white, her throat slashed and bleeding, staring at her from the foot of the bed with hollow eyes. Mark dismissed it as stress from the move, but the dreams returned the next night, more vivid and menacing. On November 9th, the disturbances grew tangible. A porcelain vase slid slowly across the mantel in the living room, halting just before the edge, as if guided by an unseen hand. In the foyer, the antique mirror reflected empty rooms, yet fleeting shapes darted across its surface, vanishing when anyone looked directly. Mark, ever the rationalist, muttered about uneven floors and drafts, but his explanations felt flimsy even to him. The next day, November 10th, Emily's screams shattered the morning silence. She claimed the woman from her dreams had stood beside her bed, whispering, "Help me," in a voice like rustling leaves. Meanwhile, Jack pointed to his bedroom window, where small, muddy handprints appeared on the glass, only to fade moments later. Cold drafts swept through the house, chilling them. Despite the roaring fireplace, Lisa's patience frayed. "Maybe we should talk to someone," she said to Mark over dinner. "A historian. Or a medium." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Let's not get carried away. It's an old house. It's probably just settling." But Lisa couldn't shake her growing dread. The next morning, she contacted Dr. Evelyn Reed, a paranormal investigator recommended by a neighbor. Dr. Reed agreed to visit on November 15th, her steady voice offering Lisa a sliver of hope amid the mounting chaos. Chapter 3, The Investigator Arrives. Dr. Evelyn Reed arrived at Blackwood Manor on November 15th, her presence a grounding force. She carried a suitcase brimming with equipment, EMF meters, infrared cameras, and a spirit box, tools of her trade as a seasoned investigator. Over tea in the kitchen, she listened intently as the Thompsons recounted their experiences, her calm demeanor soothing their rattled nerves. "Blackwood Manor has a reputation," she said, setting her cup down. "There are records of disturbances here stretching back to the 19th century." She began her investigation in the foyer, where her EMF meter buzzed and spiked erratically. "This is a strong electromagnetic field," she noted, "often a sign of paranormal activity." Upstairs, Mark explored the attic and discovered an old photograph wedged behind a loose board, a stern woman in a high-collared dress, her piercing eyes staring out from the faded image, dated 1872. Dr. Reed's breath caught when he showed it to her. "That's Eleanor Blackwood," she said. "She was murdered in this house." "Murdered?" Lisa's voice trembled. "Stabbed by her husband, Henry, in 1872, Dr. Reed explained. "He flew into a jealous rage, convinced she'd been unfaithful. Henry disappeared after the killing. His body was never found." The revelation hung heavy in the air. As they returned to the main floor, the temperature dropped sharply, a biting cold that made Jack cling to Lisa's side. "Mom, I don't like this," he whimpered. Dr. Reed switched on her spirit box, and static crackled through the room. A garbled whisper emerged. "Mine, mine." The investigator's eyes narrowed. "There's more than one presence here," she said, "and they're not at rest." Chapter 4. Escalation. The entity's aggression intensified after Dr. Reed's visit. On November 16th, Emily sleepwalked to the basement, muttering in a deep, guttural voice that wasn't her own. "She's mine." Mark found her there, tracing cryptic patterns on the damp stone walls with her fingers, her eyes glassy and distant. When he shook her awake, she blinked in confusion, remembering nothing. The next day, doors began slamming shut without warning. Jack was trapped in his room for hours, sobbing as he pounded on the locked door until it inexplicably swung open. At night, heavy footsteps echoed through the halls, deliberate and menacing. Lisa woke to find her paintings, vibrant landscapes, slashed with streaks of red paint she hadn't applied. Mark's toolbox vanished from the garage, only to reappear dangling from the dining room chandelier. Desperate for answers, Dr. Reed pored over historical records in Savannah's archives. She uncovered newspaper clippings from 1872 detailing Eleanor's gruesome murder at Henry's hands, fueled by his paranoia over her alleged affair with a local artist. One article hinted at a twist. Though Henry had fled, some speculated he'd never left the property, that he'd died within the manor's walls, his fate obscured by time. On November 18th, Dr. Reed conducted a séance in the parlor. The family gathered around a circle of flickering candles. "Eleanor, are you here?" she asked. The flames danced wildly, and a soft, mournful voice emerged from the spirit box. "He lingers, seeks a vessel." The realization hit like a thunderclap. Henry's malevolent spirit, not Eleanor's, was the driving force behind the terror. Enraged by his wife's supposed betrayal, he sought to possess a new host. Eleanor's whispers had been a warning, not a threat. Chapter 5. The Grave. Dr. Reed's research pointed to a possible anchor for Henry's spirit. If he died here, his remains could be binding him to the manor, she told the family. On November 19th, they searched the backyard and found an unmarked grave hidden beneath a thick snarl of ivy. With shovels in hand, they dug, unearthing a skeleton, its skull fractured, a rusted knife gripped in its bony fingers. "Henry," Dr. Reed confirmed, her voice steady despite the grim discovery. That night, the manor unleashed its fury, windows shattered inward, glass spraying across the floors. Furniture toppled as if hurled by unseen hands. A shadowy figure prowled the halls, its eyes glowing with malice. Jack screamed as invisible forces dragged him across his bedroom floor, his small body jerking until Mark tackled him, pinning him down until the assault ceased. "We need to end this," Lisa sobbed, cradling her children. Dr. Reed's jaw tightened. "A cleansing ritual at the grave, where his power is strongest. It's our only chance." Chapter 6. The Cleansing. On November 20th, beneath a waning moon, the family and Dr. Reed assembled at the grave. She traced a circle of salt around it, placed candles at the 4 cardinal points, and began chanting prayers of banishment. The air grew dense, electric, with unseen energy. A shadow burst from the earth, coalescing into Henry's grotesque form, his face twisted with rage, his hands clawing at the air. "You dare defy me," he bellowed, lunging at Dr. Reed. The salt barrier flared, repelling him, and the candles blazed brighter as her voice rose, unwavering. "By the light of truth and the power of forgiveness, I banish you, Henry Blackwood." Henry's spirit thrashed, his screams splitting the night, then disintegrated into wisps of darkness. A soft glow materialized beside the grave. Eleanor, her expression peaceful, she mouthed, "Thank you," before fading away, released at last. The manor fell silent, its oppressive atmosphere dissolving. The Thompsons clung to one another, tears of relief streaming down their faces. Chapter 7. Peace at last. In the days that followed, Blackwood Manor shed its sinister edge. The air felt crisp and clean, the shadows soft rather than threatening. Emily's nightmares vanished, and Jack's laughter rang through the halls, free of ghostly echoes. Dr. Reed left on November 22nd, her work complete, leaving the family with a sense of closure. The Thompsons chose to stay, determined to reclaim the manor as their home. They planted a garden over Henry's grave, transforming a site of horror into one of growth and beauty. On November 25th, they gathered for their first Thanksgiving in the manor. Lisa raised her glass, her voice steady. To new beginnings, and to the spirits who remind us that even in darkness, there's light. The family toasted, their warmth and resilience banishing any lingering chill. Blackwood Manor stood at peace, its ghosts finally laid to rest. Story number 3, The Curse of the Pharaoh's Amulet. Chapter 1, Discovery and Initial Signs. Date, September 10th, 2014. Location, British Museum, London, UK. Dr. Amelia Hartley adjusted her glasses and leaned closer to the dusty crate, her fingers brushing aside layers of protective wrapping. The archive room of the British Museum was a sanctuary of shadows, its air thick with the scent of aged paper and ancient relics, a familiar comfort after years spent deciphering the past. Today, a new shipment from Luxor had arrived, and among the artifacts was a small, ornate box tucked away in a corner, as if it had been waiting for her. Carefully, she lifted the lid. Inside lay a gold amulet, its surface etched with intricate hieroglyphs and crowned with a scarab beetle carved from deep blue lapis lazuli. The craftsmanship was breathtaking, a testament to a long-dead artisan's skill. As Amelia's fingers closed around it, a strange warmth spread through her hand, tingling up her arm like a faint electric current. For a fleeting moment she thought she heard a whisper. A voice carried on, an unseen wind, too faint to decipher. "Beautiful, isn't it?" came a voice from behind her. She turned to see her colleague, Dr. Marcus Finch, leaning against the doorway with a casual smile. "Yes, quite remarkable," Amelia replied, still cradling the amulet. "Do you know anything about it?" Marcus shrugged, his sandy hair catching the dim light. Not much. It was found in a crate, with other miscellaneous items, probably overlooked during the initial sorting. Amelia nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. She decided to take the amulet to her office for further study. As she walked through the museum's echoing corridors, past towering statues and glass-encased relics, the weight of the amulet in her pocket felt oddly comforting, as if it belonged there. That night, she placed it on her nightstand, telling herself it was for research purposes. But as sleep claimed her, vivid dreams invaded her mind. She stood in a grand temple of sandstone and gold, surrounded by priests, chanting in a guttural language she couldn't grasp. A man with piercing eyes and a cruel smile approached, holding the amulet aloft. Then darkness swallowed her whole. She awoke with a start, her heart pounding against her ribs. The amulet lay innocently beside her, glinting in the moonlight, but the dream's residue clung to her thoughts like cobwebs. Over the next few days, small misfortunes began to plague her. A priceless vase slipped from her hands, shattering on the archive floor in a cascade of ceramic shards. The museum's power flickered and died, leaving her trapped in darkness for hours. Her car refused to start, stranding her in a cold London downpour. At first, she dismissed these incidents as coincidence, her rational mind clinging to logic, but a nagging doubt took root, whispering that the amulet might be more than a mere artifact. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her work. Yet the seed of unease had been planted, ready to grow. Chapter 2. Escalation. Date, September 12th to 14th, 2014. Location, British Museum, London, UK. On September 12th, disaster struck with brutal suddenness. Marcus was in the exhibit hall, adjusting a display case of mummified ibises. When the heavy oak structure groaned and toppled, it crashed down, pinning him beneath its weight as glass shattered and wood splintered. Amelia rushed to his side, her screams drowned out by the chaos of shouting staff and clattering debris. Paramedics arrived, prying him free and rushing him to the hospital with a broken leg and severe bruising. As they wheeled him away, his pained eyes met hers, and a cold dread settled in her stomach. That evening, alone in her flat, Amelia noticed a strange mark on her wrist, a faint, bruise-like ring that hadn't been there before. By morning, it had darkened to a sickly purple, and a wave of fatigue washed over her, leaving her limbs heavy and her mind foggy. Shadows seemed to dart in the corners of her vision, vanishing when she turned to look. Whispers echoed in empty rooms, faint but insistent, like voices trapped behind a veil. Desperate for answers, she turned to her research. Late into the night, she pored over ancient texts and museum records, her desk littered with coffee cups and crumpled notes. A reference in an obscure journal caught her eye. A priest named Kamenwati, betrayed by Pharaoh Ramses II, had cursed an amulet to doom its bearers. The description matched her find perfectly. The next day, she sought out Dr. Evelyn Marsh, a historian known for her no-nonsense approach to Egyptian lore. Evelyn examined the amulet with a frown, her silver hair glinting under the office lights. "Curses are often exaggerated," she said, her tone clipped. "But there's something off about it. Be careful, Amelia." That night, the dreams returned with vicious clarity. Kamenwati's spectral form loomed over her, his eyes blazing with fury, his skeletal hand outstretched. "Return what is mine," he hissed, his voice scraping like sandpaper across her skin. She awoke drenched in sweat, her breath ragged. The amulet clutched in her hand, despite having left it on the dresser across the room. Chapter 3. The Revelation. Date, September the 15th to 18th, 2014. Location, British Museum, London, UK. Amelia's health unraveled further. Dark circles ringed her eyes, and the mark on her wrist spread, forming intricate patterns that mirrored the amulet's hieroglyphs. Her assistant, Sarah, a bright-eyed graduate student, fell into a coma after a freak accident in the archive. A shelf collapsed, yet she remained untouched, her body simply crumpling as if drained of life. Guilt gnawed at Amelia. Was this her fault for bringing the amulet into their lives? Buried in the museum's dusty archives, she uncovered a fragile papyrus fragment detailing Kaminwati's fate. Betrayed by the Pharaoh he served, he had been ambushed by royal guards, stabbed through the heart as they tore the amulet from his dying grasp. In his final breath, he cursed it to bring ruin to all who possessed it, unless returned to his tomb with a plea for forgiveness. The solution crystallized. She had to take the amulet to Kaminwati's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The logistics were daunting, securing permits, arranging travel, and battling her own deteriorating strength. But Sarah's life, and perhaps her own, depended on it. On September 18th, she booked a flight to Luxor, her hands trembling as she packed the amulet into a padded case. The curse's grip tightened, the airport lights flickered as she checked in, and a sudden sandstorm delayed her departure by hours. Kaminwati's spirit, it seemed, was determined to keep her from her goal. Chapter 4. Journey to Egypt. Date, September 20th to 24th, 2014. Location, Luxor, Egypt. Amelia landed in Luxor on September 20th. The oppressive heat of the Egyptian sun, a stark contrast to London's gray chill. She met her guide, Ahmed, a wiry man with a weathered face and deep knowledge of the Valley of the Kings. His eyes widened when she showed him the amulet, his voice dropping to a whisper. That is no ordinary relic. The spirit of Kaminwati is said to be vengeful. Many fear his name even now. Together they navigated a maze of obstacles. Her luggage vanished at the airport, forcing a delay to replace essentials. A sudden fever confined her to a hotel bed for a day, her dreams filled with Kaminwati's snarling visage. Egyptian officials balked at her request to enter a restricted tomb, requiring bribes and pleas to secure access. On September 23rd, they reached the valley's edge. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a sea of gold broken by jagged cliffs. Ahmed led her to an unmarked tomb, its entrance concealed by centuries of sand. This is it, he said, his voice hushed with reverence. Kaminwati's final resting place. That night, camped near the tomb, Amelia dreamed of Kaminwati again. His form was more solid, his anger a palpable force. You will not succeed, he snarled, his bony hand reaching for her throat. She awoke gasping, the amulet pulsing with a faint, eerie glow in her bag. Ahmed stirred nearby, his face pale in the firelight. Tomorrow, she whispered, resolve hardening within her. It ends tomorrow. Chapter 5. Breaking the Curse. Date, September 25th, 2014. Location, Valley of the Kings, Egypt. Dawn painted the valley in hues of orange as Amelia and Ahmed entered the tomb. The air was stale, heavy with the weight of centuries, and her flashlight cast long shadows across faded murals depicting Kaminwati's life and betrayal. At the chamber's heart stood his sarcophagus, its lid carved with protective spells worn smooth by time. Amelia's hands shook as she placed the amulet on the stone. She had memorized the incantation from the papyrus, but doubt gnawed at her. What if it failed? Taking a deep breath, she began to recite the ancient words, her voice trembling but steady, echoing through the chamber like a prayer. The amulet grew warm, then searing hot, as the air thickened with unseen energy. A gust of wind extinguished her flashlight, plunging the tomb into darkness. A low, menacing growl reverberated through the space, and Kamanwati's spirit materialized before her, his eyes twin flames of fury. "You dare disturb my rest?" he thundered, his voice shaking the walls, dust raining from the ceiling. Amelia stood her ground, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I come to return what was taken," she said, gesturing to the amulet. "I seek to right the wrong done to you." The spirit paused, its rage tempered by a flicker of curiosity. "You would return my amulet?" it asked, skepticism threading its tone. "Yes," Amelia replied, her voice firm despite her fear. "And I ask for your forgiveness for the desecration of your tomb and the theft of your belongings." Kamanwati's form flickered, revealing a glimpse of the man he once was, a priest clad in white, devoted to his gods, betrayed by those he served. "Very well," he said at last, his voice softening. "Place the amulet upon my sarcophagus and speak the words of release." Amelia obeyed, laying the amulet on the stone and reciting the final incantation. The tomb trembled, a low rumble building as a blinding light erupted from the amulet. When it faded, Kamanwati's spirit had vanished, and the amulet lay dull and lifeless, its power extinguished. Ahmed rushed to her side, his face pale but relieved. "Is it over?" Amelia nodded, a wave of exhaustion and relief washing over her. "Yes, it's over." Epilogue. Peace restored. Date, October 1st, 2014. Location, British Museum, London, UK. Back in London, Amelia donated the amulet to the Cairo Museum, ensuring it would be treated with the respect it deserved. Her colleagues recovered, Marcus's injuries healed with surprising speed, and Sarah awoke from her coma, bewildered but unharmed. Amelia resumed her work at the museum, but with a newfound reverence for the artifacts she studied. The curse had taught her that some mysteries carried a heavy price, yet courage and respect could heal even the deepest wounds of the past. As autumn leaves fell outside her office window, she smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks.
If you're new, hit subscribe and share with friends and family. Let us know in the comments how we can improve.